Good morning, everybody. It's 7 o'clock here in the UK. Very welcome to spend your breakfast with us here at Sky News. Will the Army be helping us fill up our tanks? They've been put on standby, and with many petrol stations still experiencing problems, there are calls to let key workers jump the queue. We'll speak to the Deputy Chair of the British Medical Association, who says there's a real risk that NHS staff can't do their jobs. Also, who's in line for a Platinum Jubilee Medal from the Queen? We'll be discussing all of that with the royal biographer Angela Levin at 8:20. And the name's Taylor, Rocky Taylor. As Daniel Craig prepares for his last Bond, we'll speak to a man who knows the pain involved in making a Bond movie. It's Tuesday, the 28th of September. Army at the ready. The government puts soldiers on standby after petrol pumps run dry amid calls for them to let key workers queue jump.
If we had a client that fell over, for example, how am I meant to get there like that when I've got hardly any petrol in my tank and I've got all these lines that I have to sit in? It's ridiculous.
The government hopes that supplies will return to normal in a few days, but motorists are still joining long queues at petrol stations.
I'm live at court where a man is due to appear this morning charged with the murder of primary school teacher Sabrina Nessa.
R&B performer R. Kelly found guilty here in New York after victims battled for decades for justice.
Here at the Labour Party conference in Brighton, it's a big day for Keir Starmer, but he faces a showdown with the left of his party.
Condemnation from the US as North Korea carries out another suspected ballistic missile test.
I'm live in La Palma as lava oozes towards the sea. Fears of a toxic reaction.
Shaken and stirred after 18 months, Daniel Craig's latest and last Bond premieres here at the Royal Albert Hall, and I've been lucky enough to meet him.
My surgeon came to set and watched me work for 2 days because he couldn't understand why I kept on breaking things. And he went, "Oh, I get it now." I mean, it's just, Bond doesn't walk into a room. He comes through the window.
Premiere this evening. How exciting. Very good morning. The Army has been put on standby to help deal with the fuel crisis, which has caused petrol stations to run dry across the country following panic buying. But the government says soldiers will only step in if necessary. This amid calls for key workers to be allowed to queue jump to fill up their vehicles. Shingi Maruriki reports.
This is now a problem so widespread it may need military intervention. With queues building, pumps emptying and tensions rising at forecourts across the country, the government says military tanker drivers are now on standby, ready to be deployed if needed.
No fuel! Where?
This strain on the supply chain is now so severe in some places, drivers from the Army are receiving special training on how to help the petrol industry, a step ministers say is precautionary for now. At a station in Southampton, they sold 4 days of fuel in less than 24 hours as people pile towards the pumps.
I've literally got 10 miles. I say 10 miles because it states 10 miles, but it's on the last bar.
The impact of the fuel crisis is already being felt in people's lives. Care manager Kirsty Guy spent yesterday covering calls for 2 other members of staff.
I've got carers that are refusing to go to work because they're like, I'm not wasting the last of my petrol. I need it for school runs. I need it for emergency reasons. Even finding a petrol station that's got fuel at the moment, it's horrendous. It's really, really bad. I'm rushed off my feet.
The numbers on her dashboard, a glaring reminder she might not make it to work tomorrow, leaving vulnerable patients in danger.
If we had a client that fell over, for example, how am I meant to get there like that when I've got hardly any petrol in my tank and I've got all these lines that I have to sit in? It's ridiculous. So that person will be on the floor for how long? If they don't have an alarm, which most of our clients do, but if they don't have an alarm or if they don't have a neighbour that checks in or a family member, how long are they going to be there for?
Concerns like those mean the chief executive of one of Britain's largest groups of doctors is calling for immediate action.
This seems to be a spiralling situation, so it needs to be tackled immediately, and the government needs to take responsibility. What I have seen so far from the government is a denial that there is a problem.
Environment Secretary George Eustace, speaking on the great debate on Sky News and Sky Showcase, blamed the shortages on panic buying.
Why can't the government now make a decision and do something constructive instead of blaming everybody else, not actually looking at themselves? Because it is their failing. We should not be put in this situation. I should not have this conversation with you right now, but I am, because you failed. Simple. You simply failed.
I don't think it's helpful to overcomplicate things, and what we should be focused on is making sure that we get the supplies back in to these garages and actually get the demand levels down to normal levels.
As queues stretched into the night once again, one thing is certain. These are dramatic scenes which may need drastic solutions, and the army will be ready to roll. Shingi Marike, Sky News.
Sadia in Manchester for us this morning. Hello to you, Sadia. Good morning. What's it looking like there this morning?
Good morning. Well, it's a bit intermittent. Sometimes there are queues here and then sometimes the forecourt does sort of empty out. But it has been like that, as you've seen across the country. But you've just heard there, the government is putting so much effort into trying to resolve this issue. The defence, the transport, the business sector, it's all working together. So on the one hand, you've got the army perhaps ready to deploy if needed. But on the other hand, drivers who already can drive fuel lorries are being told that if their licence expires, so they need to do training once in a while, if their licence is due to expire between Monday today and the 31st of December, that will then get extended until next January, so that's January 2023. So quite a long extension there for those lorry drivers. I'm just step out of the shot so you can see some of the queues, and of course this comes as unions are urging for key workers to be prioritised, doctors and nurses amongst them. The BMA saying that they don't rely on fuel just to get to work, but also to do their work, to receive medical supplies and also to get to patients who need urgent care. And, you know, it's also ordinary drivers. Yesterday I met a woman taking her daughter to university, and she had to do it on the train. She had to take her daughter by train with all of the things that they were carrying to move into university. You can imagine how long that is, and this woman was in tears. I also met a boy who missed his stop, and then he was looking at £150 taxi fare because, of course, don't forget, taxi drivers also rely on this to do their jobs, and, you know, fuel prices are going up as well. So not just key workers, ordinary drivers also hoping and watching to make sure that this issue is resolved as soon as possible.
We're just looking at the chap filling up his jerry can as we're chatting to you. One of the issues that the government was pointing to about the challenges that people are basically just taking more fuel than they need, and there he is tucking it behind the vehicle as he's filling up this morning. Have you seen much of that?
Some of it, yes. Driving here as well, we've seen some petrol stations with queues and people trying to plan ahead. I think if you're being told that fuel is going to return to normal in the next few days, many people can't wait that long. Lots of people are hoping to, you know, go away for the weekend. Next weekend, they're thinking about how they will travel. Many of us have spent a long time already indoors, and perhaps people are keen to make sure that they're not constrained by fuel prices like this one.
OK, thank you. Thanks a lot. Very thing that the government is asking us not to do. Deputy Chair of the British Medical Association, Dr. David Wrigley, is joining us. Hello to you, Dr. Wrigley. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. Well, there is a suggestion that emergency workers should be able to jump the queue at petrol stations. What do you think?
Well, this morning there'll be many health and social care workers who'll be nervously looking at the dials on their dashboard to see if they've got enough fuel just to undertake their daily work. And, you know, a lot of work goes on in the community, looking after patients who are desperately unwell. And we're just asking that we are allowed to get on with our job. And, you know, if we haven't got enough fuel, then clearly that will affect patients. And we're calling for the government to take action today to let us know how we can get on with our work and look after our patients.
Government telling people not to panic buy. Just seeing a chap there in Manchester as we were chatting to our correspondent in the field, filling up jerry cans. That's not going to help, is it?
Well, I think obviously it's an important message to tell people not to panic, but it's human nature when we know that there's queues and people want to buy petrol. But we're talking today about health and social care workers wanting to get on and do their job. And we can't be waiting in queues for 2 or 3 hours for petrol or diesel when we have patients to see. So we do need a system in place today. We've had no information at all about how we get around this problem, how we deal with it if our fuel is running very low. We have patients to see. So we need urgent action today from the government. Now, they designate a local fuel station for priority critical workers. That's one solution, but we've heard nothing at all. And I hope the government act today on this.
What would you constitute as a critical worker?
Well, health and social care, it's teamwork. So it's not just about doctors, it's nurses, occupational therapists, physios. We're all out there in the community day in, day out, looking after critically ill patients, those who are end of life, palliative care patients, and we're trying to keep them well, relieve their symptoms, try and keep them out of hospital. And that's what we're there every day doing quietly and silently for the NHS, and we want to carry on doing that. But we're just concerned that we're not going to be able to because we'll run out of fuel during the day.
What about those who are, cab drivers though, or food suppliers as well? Couldn't they also? I mean, everybody can make a case for them being a critical worker, I suppose.
I agree. I mean, there are many, many people who need fuel to keep life going, keep the economy running, and the government need to look at this urgently and make out a plan about how we deal with this, because we can't continue like this day to day. We're told it's going to be over in a day or two, but we can't risk that. We have to ensure that we've got enough fuel to do our day-to-day work, and in particular, from my perspective, for healthcare, to look after my patients.
And what about, we believe that the army is on standby, we're being told, but not actually being called in at this stage. What's your message to the government on that one?
Well, if that's needed, then we need to do that urgently, because if that allows us to continue to do the work we do, for those critical workers, to look after people, to ensure we've got enough food, to make sure there's healthcare in place, then yes, let's do that, because we can't dither and wait and just see and hope that this settles down. We have to act today. And
what is the situation where you are, Doctor, up there in Carnforth?
Well, we're seeing petrol stations that are empty. There's long queues of people waiting for fuel. And that's what worries me. I'm in my surgery now. I'm starting soon. I'll do some home visits later. And, like many others, if I need fuel, then I can't be waiting 2 or 3 hours, because I've got patients who are very unwell to see, and many, many other colleagues who work in the community will feel the same way. And as I said, we've had no information at all. Nothing has been told to us by the senior managers, by the politicians, to the health and social care workers, and that's just not right. We want to get on with our job, but we can't do that if we haven't got the transport to do it. And as I say, so much work goes on in the community to help our patients that we need action immediately.
A couple of decades ago now, I remember there being a fuel crisis when Tony Blair was in power. I'm sure you do too. What was the situation then? Were you given an option to be able to queue jump?
Yes, I mean, that was about 21 years ago, wasn't it? I was a trainee GP then, and I remember it well. And we had a pass to get through into fuel stations in order to do what I've just said, to get on with our important work of looking after patients, and that could work again. But as I say, we've heard nothing, so we're just hearing words but no action, and that needs to change.
Okay, today is what you're saying. You don't have time to wait any longer.
My colleagues will be on very low fuel, worried about getting to patients, and that they need to focus on their patients and not be focusing on the fuel dial.
Okay, Doctor, good luck today. I hope you manage to get the fuel if you need it. We appreciate you taking the time. Still to come on the programme for you, 8:05 this morning, speaking to the Shadow Home Secretary, Nick Thomas-Simons, at the Labour Party conference in Brighton. London Marathon takes place this weekend. We'll look ahead to it with event director Hugh Brasher. And then at 9:30, 2 Paralympic medalists will be with me to talk about a new initiative to give 2 million visually impaired people better access to sport. Before all that, though, a story that we can update you on about a man who is expected in court today, charged with the murder of the London primary school teacher Sabrina Nessa. Aisha Zaid is at Willesden Crown Court for us. Aisha, tell us more. Good morning.
Kochi Sanamaja is the man in question. He's expected here later this morning after he was charged with Sabrina Nessa's murder last night by police. Now, he was initially arrested on Sunday morning during the early hours around 3 a.m. in Eastbourne, East Sussex. That's where he's from. And at the same time, the police also seized a vehicle, a Nissan Micra, which was parked around half a mile away from where the arrest took place. Now, a vigil was held in memory of Sabrina on Friday evening. Her family members attended, as well as friends and lots of members of the public to remember her. She was only 28 years old when she was murdered. She was a Year 1 teacher at Rushy Green Primary School in Catford. Now, the murder took place on the 17th of September. Sabrina had been on her way to meet a friend at the depot. That's a pub not too far away from where she lived. It was a journey that should have taken just over 5 minutes, but police believe that she was attacked in Cateford Park in Kidsbrook, just minutes away from her home. So hopefully today we'll start seeing some more answers into what happened that day.
OK, for now, thank you. The R&B singer R. Kelly faces up to 20 years in prison after being found guilty in a sex abuse trial in New York. The singer's lawyers say he's disappointed. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner reports.
He was one of the biggest R&B music artists of a generation. Now R. Kelly is convicted of running a criminal enterprise, of sexually abusing boys, girls and women for 2 decades. His defence team dismayed, despite weeks of damning and disturbing testimony. What did he say? What did Mr. Kelly say to you, Mr. Canuck?
He is disappointed, as I am. You didn't get to see what we saw in terms of the discovery. You didn't get to see all the inconsistencies. We said in our summation that the government cherry-picked their version that they thought would support the continuation of the narrative. They did.
Travelling the world and winning 3 Grammy Awards. But a jury decided this was also a front for grooming, beating and degrading young women for his own sexual gratification. The attorney who represented many Me Too survivors says Mr. Kelly is the worst abuser of them all.
I have been practicing law for 47 years. During this time, I have pursued many sexual predators who have committed crimes against women and children. Of all the predators that I have pursued, however, Mr. Kelly is the worst.
Kelly's relationship with another music star, Aaliyah, was at the centre of this case. The prosecution say R. Kelly bribed an official to enable him to marry her when she was just 15, believing she was pregnant and he could force her into an abortion. Mr. Kelly now faces decades in prison. The music industry also stands accused of turning a blind eye to allegations against him for far too long. Martha Kellner, Sky News, New York.
Levels of illegal drugs found in the river running through the Glastonbury Festival site are at such a high level they risk damaging wildlife. The researchers discovered that during the festival, levels of ecstasy and cocaine in the water were so high they even threatened a rare population of eels downstream of the site. More than 17,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel since the start of 2021, more than double the total for all of 2020. The figures, based on Home Office data, come despite the government saying it would make such crossings unviable. UEFA's dropping legal action against the 3 remaining clubs who are still committed to the so-called European Super League. It's after Real Madrid, Barcelona and Juventus argued in court that the attempt to punish them for setting up a breakaway league was against European competition law. Fines imposed against the 9 other clubs involved will also be dropped. Lava's continuing to head towards the sea in La Palma, leading to fears of more toxic reactions. Well, our correspondent Becky Cottrell joining us now live from La Palma this morning. My goodness, it's always so dramatic, isn't it, in the early hours, the images of what's happening behind you. Good morning, Becky.
Yes, the volcano really is bright and burning this morning. There's a larger spray of lava further up near the top of the volcano, and then a bit further down, this giant fountain of lava. It looks like it's a few 800 feet high. Now, this volcano has been unpredictable since it started erupting. Yesterday, the tremors completely disappeared for a couple of hours, and we thought that it all might be over. And then they started again. We were speaking to a volcanologist. He said that's quite usual with these kind of eruptions, but they can't predict how long they will go on for. He thought it would be several weeks. Now, the next thing that everyone is waiting for is if and when that lava reaches the sea. It's a very steep slope from the top of the volcano down to the coast. And when we last heard, the lava was around 800 metres away. Now, if that lava does hit the sea, it will release toxic water vapours containing hydrochloric acid. It's dangerous to breathe in, and it irritates your eyes and your skin. And that is why local authorities have warned people in the surrounding neighbourhoods near to the coast to stay inside. Now, yesterday, they said they thought it was imminent that the lava would reach the sea. It hasn't yet, so we are still waiting for that. How quickly that will happen will depend on how quickly the lava is moving.
OK, thanks, Becky. Thanks a lot. Pretty dramatic pictures continuing there from La Palma. Lots of people having to relocate, but thankfully no casualties to speak of at this stage. Now, Madame Tussauds has gathered waxes of the 6 stars of James Bond to mark the return of the iconic spy in the film, No Time to Die. And what a lineup it is. All the wax bonds will be on display to the public from the 30th of September. Each one is dressed in a tailored suit, of course. The lineup is fronted by Craig with Sean Connery, Timothy Dalton, of course, and the rest of the Bonds from down the years. Simon Templar there. Oh, well, not Simon Templar, Roger Moore, but Simon Templar to those of us of a certain age. Who is your favourite Bond? Why don't you tweet me and let me know? Mine, I have to say, not really Roger Moore, probably. I like Pierce Brosnan, but I think it has to be the original Bond, doesn't it? Doesn't it? I think it does. Maybe not that one. Now, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is back on policy rather than party infighting. Live now to Brighton, and Tamara's standing by for us today. A few more challenges for him today, the leader. Good morning, Tamara.
Morning, Kay. Well, the party is grappling with the fallout of a resignation yesterday. You never want a resignation, but particularly not overshadowing your big moment at the party conference. Now, Keir Starmer yesterday lost Andy MacDonald. What you need to know about him is he was the last survivor of Jeremy Corbyn's era. He was in the shadow cabinet, but very much aligned with Jeremy Corbyn. There he is. He was hailed as a hero at this left-wing rally last night. He said that the party was divided and he was annoyed with them for not supporting a £15 an hour minimum wage, which sounds like it's going to be a key demand of the left of the party. Now, people around Keir Starmer are saying that they're not shedding any tears over his departure. The party has changed, and they think it is a good day when people from the Jeremy Corbyn era want to leave, and yet those who left the party, such as Louise Ellman, who left over anti-Semitism, have returned. But Sir Keir Starmer, who a lot of MPs, I must be honest, are hoping that he will start talking about what everyone else is talking about, which is petrol shortages, what we do about it, is now facing more headlines about infighting. And there may be a bit of a moment at the conference later today when there is actually a vote on the idea of a £15 minimum wage. So we'll see if that gets through.
OK, Tamara, thank you. Quick look at the weather for you now. And the rest of this week will be chilly with brisk winds and blustery showers, although there will be some brighter spells in between. Still to come on the programme for you, the army could be mobilised if fuel shortages continue over the coming days. We speak to the Fair Fuel campaign, who say the government has been ignoring the looming HGV driver crisis. That to come.
It is pretty bad. People lose their properties, lose their ownings, and it is dramatic. But it happens on one part of the island, and in the middle of the island there is a huge mountain and a volcano. So luckily our lighthouse is exactly on the other side, protected by these mountains, and therefore we don't even see detonations or lava or smoke. So people who live on the side of the lava are really in trouble to save their homes and properties. The lava cannot go to the north, but it is quite a bizarre situation. On one side, the lava is floating with 1,000 degrees, and our maintenance guy loses his plantage there. And on the other side, we are in the paradise at the infinity pool of the lighthouse. But that's how the world is today. And actually, most of the tourism on the island is still active and working. And also the smoke and the ashes don't get to the northern side because of the wind. Airplanes don't like clouds with ashes. So when the wind turns, and that happened yesterday, the flights would not go anymore. So that is the main problem for an island. The tourists can get there. And still ships are going from Tenerife and the other Canarian islands. And they increase the number of ships. But when the airports are closed, then the stream of tourism is cut.
We don't understand that every lake or a pond is a habitat in itself, which houses frogs, snakes, crabs, turtles, birds, so many different life forms. Human beings directly depend on underground water source. So a lake or a pond is necessary to replenish these groundwater resources.
Cercando as áreas, limpando as áreas e progressivamente avançando com os plantios. Isso daqui é uma sentença de morte para os manguezais.
And again, you're watching The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. The British Medical Association has warned that people who are unwell will suffer during the current petrol crisis. The Army has been put on standby to help deal with the fuel crisis, which has caused petrol stations to run dry right across the country following panic buying. But the government says soldiers will only step in if necessary. Speaking to me earlier, the BMA's Deputy Chair, Dr. David Wrigley, called for key workers to be given priority in filling up their vehicles.
Like many others, if I need fuel, then I can't be waiting 2 or 3 hours because I've got patients who are very unwell to see, and many other colleagues who work in the community will feel the same way. And as I said, we've had no information at all. Nothing has been told to us by the senior managers, by the politicians, to the health and social care workers, and that's just not right. We want to get on with our job. But we can't do that if we haven't got the transport to do it. And as I say, so much work goes on in the community to help our patients that we need action immediately. We need urgent action today from the government. Now, they designate a local fuel station for priority critical workers. That's one solution, but we've heard nothing at all. And I hope the government act today on this.
Last night saw the first episode of the new Sky News and Sky Showcase series, The Great Debate with Trevor Phillips. Among the guests was the Environment Secretary, who was taken to task by an NHS worker that said she thought the government had failed on the issue.
I mean, where's the leadership? I mean, why, all you've stated so far is it's the media, it's the customers taking too much. At the end of the day, where is your leadership and where are you stating, where do we stand as key workers? Are you going to give us priority, yes or no? I mean, why is it left to the individual forecourt to decide? Again, why can't the government now make a decision and do something constructive instead of blaming everybody else, not actually looking at themselves? Because it is their failing. We should not be put in this situation. I should not have this conversation with you right now, but I am, because you failed. Simple. You simply failed.
Well, you failed.
The answer is to, as I said, get the supply demand.
But she's saying, come on, she's heard that. She's saying, make a decision. Tell us that you're in favour of it or not. Don't go missing.
Well, what I'm saying is I don't think it's helpful to overcomplicate things. And what we should be focused on is making sure that we get the supplies back in to these garages and actually get the demand levels down to normal levels. It's already gone from a 50% increase down to yesterday it was about 20% above normal levels. There's signs that this is calming down now and that people are getting back to normal buying habits. As soon as they do, this situation will be resolved.
Joined now by Howard Cox of the Fair Fuel campaign. Hello to you, Mr. Cox. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. Do you think demand is going to be eased in coming days? And if so, why is it so bad now?
Good morning, Kay. It's a privilege to be on your show. That key worker, that NHS worker was so right. The government are fully to blame for this. And we've been warning them for the last 15 years. We're backed by the Road Haulage Association and Logistics UK. And we've been warning the government of this calamity, this doomsday scenario of the HGV driver shortage for 15 years. And they have buried their head in the sand thinking everything would be rosy. And then we get Grant Shapps coming on TV and radio saying, don't panic, everything's going to be OK. That's the worst thing to do, is to tell people not to panic. And you cannot blame drivers, you cannot blame them whatsoever for actually trying to chase the elusive filling up of their diesel or petrol vehicles. And it will continue to get worse. I'm still hearing most of the garages are empty at the moment, especially where I am in rural areas, because they're the last to be filled up. What we're seeing is that most of the oil companies are actually concentrating things like motorway service stations. And the reason being, they're more profitable. They can charge higher prices. And it's terrible that the profiteering is actually a result of the government's incompetence.
So you think the situation will get worse before it gets better?
Yes, I do. For the next 2 or 3 days, I still think we're going to miss a situation where, one, people are still going to be panicking because they've got to get to work, and particularly the key workers. And I'm also adding small businesses and the white van men going to actually do a job to actually, put food on his table. He's actually making decisions now where he has to turn down jobs because he can't get there. These are the sorts of things that are happening. And really what we're looking at is classic government, looking at sticking plaster solutions rather than actually a long-term plan to actually encourage people to get into this profession.
The government are very critical of people panic buying. What would you say in response to that?
Yes, and that's absolutely right. I'm not condoning panic buying. The problem is, and particularly, I got one garage ringing me yesterday, and they sent me an email of a photo of a receipt, petrol receipt for 90 pence. Someone actually just filled up their tank, and that's just stupid. It's really pathetic. But what we could do is actually encourage people, and it's happening already in most garages, of rationing. You don't need to fill your tank full up. You're not going to drive 400 miles today or tomorrow in most cases. Just fill it halfway or even a third full just to get you through for the next 2 or 3 days. That's my recommendation to people. Let's relax and we can help the situation. But the government are the ones behind this. And I'm so angry with them, and so are our 1.7 million supporters.
So it is a much longer term issue, as you were saying, and it relates to HGV drivers. We are being told that some HGV drivers, 5,000 or thereabouts, will be allowed to come in from the continent, but only for a 3-month fixed term period. Do you think that can fix the problem?
No, not at all. It won't touch the sides whatsoever. It's a nice initiative, but what's the point of? You just made the point. 3 months they've been asked to come in. Why would they want to do that? The only reason they do it is if they're being paid double the money or something like that. But how are they going to integrate into systems, into businesses, and who's going to manage them? All that sort of thing. It's a good idea, but the numbers are too little and it's too late. It won't happen. The only thing we can do at the moment to get back to some sort of a normality is to get the 100, 200 military drivers to actually start delivering to full cops, because all of the tankers at the refineries are full up with diesel and petrol, ready to go. We just need some drivers' bums on seats.
Why do you think the government has not put that into action until now?
I haven't got a clue. I watched George Eustice, listened to George Eustice, I've listened to Grant Shapps, and again, they're just... Well, they're pontificating. It's unbelievable. This is an anti-car government. They don't think about long-term strategy. We need a long-term road user strategy. And above all, in the HGV drivers shortage, we must make this an attractive proposition. My daughter is 29. She drives a 40-ton truck. She ticks all the right boxes. She's young and she's female and she loves the job. But that particular image isn't being portrayed. All we're seeing is that they're being demonised. And most people, when they get stuck behind a lorry, they shout at it. They forget that what's in the back of that lorry probably is putting food on their table or medicines in their medicine chest. So what I'm seeing is the government just haven't got a clue with regard to road user transport, and it's getting worse by the day.
Why do you think, Mr. Cox, that people don't want to stay in the profession? Is it just because of the image, or is it, as we've been hearing increasingly, that the facilities are not there for drivers on the road?
All of the above, Kay. I mean, it is terrible. I mean, for example, you know, when a driver has to stay overnight, he has to sleep in the back of the cab. You know, it's cold, the facilities are bad, etc., like that. And going to the loo and washing himself and having a shower, these facilities, they're often closed. They're often charged £50 just to park, to have that privilege, etc., etc. I mean, that's been a long time. And also, wages are bad. These headlines that saying they're earning £50,000 to £80,000, it's a myth. It's not happening at all. But this is an essential service, and it should be declared as an essential service along with NHS workers.
Good to talk to you. Hopefully we'll see some break in the logjam soon. Thanks for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's bring in Grant Keenan, should we, who has created a driving academy to help keep his fleet of trucks on the road. Hello to you, Mr. Keenan. Tell me about your academy.
Good morning, Kay. Yeah, we've basically had no choice. What we've had to do is take people from outside our industry, pay them a wage, train them for 3 months, and then pay for their HGV test, and then employ them as drivers, because we've had no choice just because of the shortage.
And how's that working out for you?
So it's working well so far in terms of there's been thousands of applicants to the scheme. That's the easy bit. The hard bit is actually keeping the trucks moving at the moment. And one of the things that really does concern me is that I'm all for increasing drivers' pay and conditions. Absolutely, they're key workers. But a lot of the haulage businesses and any company that's running wheels, they can't make a margin if they're paying drivers £50,000 or £60,000 a year. So the worry for me is that over the next few months, we'll start to see businesses going under.
So what's the answer to that? Because given that we're just hearing from our previous contributors saying it is an essential service and drivers should be paid more and have better facilities, who's going to pay for that?
Well, I think the answer is really quite simple. Is the 3-month extension to the relaxation of visas, as Howard Cox quite rightly said, won't touch the sides. It needs to be at least 2 years to let people come in and fill that void just now. It's maybe not a long-term solution, but we're certainly not going to solve the problem in 3 months. And, you know, who's going to want to come from Europe to come over for literally 8 weeks by the time the paperwork's done, to be told on Christmas Eve, goodbye, thank you, we no longer wish your services anymore. This problem is going to be with us for at least 12 months, maybe 18.
I get that, but there aren't enough drivers on the continent, are they? So, you know, Poland's struggling, Germany is struggling, other European countries as well. So do you feel that that is the silver bullet, that, you know, if we do allow them to come, drivers from Europe for a year or more, that they will come to the UK?
I think you're quite right, Kay. However, we have limited our pool. We're fishing in a much smaller pool, so it's by the very nature it's not as competitive. I think it's got to be a cocktail of solutions. The relaxation of visas is one of them. Speeding up tests is another. The thing that's really hurting the industry is how long it takes to get a provisional license. It's taking up to 3 months, which that'll be Christmas gone by that time already. So we have a real big problem looming.
So do you feel that the situation's going to get worse before it gets better?
Yes, I'm afraid so. I think it's going to get worse right up until the new year. I think we need some drastic action now. I think, you know, scrapping the 3 months and making it at least 2 years is going to entice people back, but nobody is going to come over here and solve our problem for less than 3 months' work.
Why should people want to be a lorry driver, an HGV driver? What's the appeal?
It's a great job. Yeah, the conditions could be better, but you're in charge of your vehicle, you're traveling, you're seeing a bit of the countryside. Depending on what kind of job, like ours, it's quite physically active as well. So you're getting a real mixture of things that make a lot of people happy. Granted, it's not for everyone, but a lot of people really love HGV driving.
And is it welcoming to women?
Unfortunately, no, Kate, it's not. I think the standard of facilities and services throughout the country needs radical improvement. You know, I mean, you can't really expect even men, you know, to put up with the circumstances of which they're expected, never mind women. You know, there needs to be a real mindset change, and we would welcome women into the industry. We've had women drivers in the past, and they're absolutely superb.
Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Keenan, for joining us. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Kay.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan, who set up his own academy in order to train drivers for his business. But he's very sceptical about what's going to happen between now and Christmas. His view is that it will get worse, the situation between now and Christmas, and drivers on the continent will not be coming here just for 3 months. Is that something that the government is going to have to look at? Again, Mr. Keenan suggesting that 2 years as a minimum for drivers to be enticed back to the UK. Meantime, North Korea has fired a suspected short-range ballistic missile into the sea in its latest weapons test in the region. Why? Well, the Japanese Prime Minister has put his country on heightened alert as a result.
Early this morning, North Korea has launched what could possibly be a ballistic missile. In response to this situation, I have asked my government to collect information, make the utmost efforts in analysing the launch, swiftly provide relevant information to the Japanese people, check safety for aircraft and ships, and be fully prepared for any contingencies.
Well, our Southeast Asia correspondent Siobhan Robbin joining us now live from Bangkok. Hello to you, Siobhan. Good afternoon where you are. Any coincidence that the North Korean representative speaking at the UN?
Okay, you know all too well that everything with North Korea is very well timed, and I think the timing of that speech really is important. Let's quickly go over the facts we know. So this test happened at 6:40 local time this morning. As you heard from the Japanese Prime Minister there, the possibility that this was a short-range ballistic missile test. If it was, that means it breaks various UN bans. We've heard already widespread condemnation around the region, but also from the US, which has said that it's destabilising, that although the test doesn't pose an immediate threat to itself or its allies, that it continues to be steadfast, ironclad, it says, in its defence of South Korea and Japan. So let's look at that timing you were alluding to. So there are two things that are important playing in here. It's just a few days since North Korea dangled the prospect of renewed peace talks with South Korea and the possibility it would consider a formal end to the Korean War, which finished in 1953. Also, as you say, this test happened at the same time that North Korea's ambassador to the UN was giving a speech at the General Assembly. And in that speech, it warned the US that if it wanted peace in the region, that it needed to stop having these joint military exercises, which it routinely hates the US carrying out with South Korea. It also said it needs to remove its strategic weapons from the peninsula. So timing is everything with North Korea. This was about getting a high-impact headline at a key moment on an international stage, bringing itself back into the spotlight. Very clear messaging to the US. And it's important to remember that after those talks broke down with Donald Trump in 2019, there hasn't been really positive communication between the US and North Korea since then. We're actually told that they have ignored requests by the Biden administration to reopen those lines of communication. So a very clear message from North Korea this morning.
OK, Siobhan, thank you. Thanks a lot. Just want to bring these images to you. Unfortunate news about an animal up in the northwest unable to find its way home. It's a white stag. He's been shot and killed by police marksmen after it was seen running through the streets of a Merseyside town. There he is, found in an industrial estate on Bootle, on Merseyside. Merseyside police and a vet who unsuccessfully tried to control it, making the animal more distressed as time went on. They say they were unable to find an organisation available to help secure the deer, so were forced to put it down for the sake of public safety. Apparently, the RSPCA said, don't do that, it will eventually find its way home. The police shot it. Fears Afghanistan's economy could collapse under Taliban rule. We'll speak with a humanitarian leader live from Kabul next.
witnessed how the Catalan fight for independence split families. It was from this chamber that Carles Puigdemont declared independence in October.
I come here because I want to show other people what happened.
I'm Michelle Clifford and I'm Sky's Europe correspondent. It's not the aim of the smugglers to actually get people to UK shores, but simply into British waters. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. There are real concerns here now about whether the health system will be able to cope.
We have to choose which patient is able to survive.
President Macron has spoken in defence of freedom of expression, saying France won't give up its caricatures and drawings made by people who dare to challenge. Afternoon, Mr. Barnier. How are you?
I have no time for any polemics.
There's anger at the police, anger at the government, anger about wider social and economic problems in this nation.
We are on the verge of fascism and we have a country to save.
An enormous explosion has just come down.
I'm Stuart Ramsey and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
You either live and recover or you die.
Hello again, everybody. The fuel crisis continuing for another day. Today we'll be updating you on what's happening at the pumps very shortly. But first, let's take you to Afghanistan now, where there are fears the country's economy is spiralling out of control under Taliban rule. It's feared banking system within the country is on the brink of collapse, with the threat of humanitarian crisis growing by the day. Joining us now from Kabul is Jan Egeland, Secretary-General of the Norwegian Refugee Council. Hello to you, Mr. Egeland. Thank you for joining us on the programme. Just how dire is the situation in Afghanistan?
It is much worse than I expected when I came here. I sat down with a lot of men and women separately, to ask them how are they faring. These are the displaced people. These are the people who fled from conflict, from drought, from all of the problems over recent months in Afghanistan. And they tell me, we have no income anymore. There is no one having an income in our network. We do not have food. We do not have shelter that will shield us from the winter, which is coming in weeks. We need humanitarian aid desperately. So I want to transmit that message now to the donor countries, to the NATO countries that left this place 8 weeks ago. It's the same civilians they left behind that are now in a free fall. We need now to scale up humanitarian relief dramatically, and we also need to have a system for getting financial transfers, banking system to work so that we can succeed.
Two issues there. Let's take them separately, should we? What humanitarian aid is needed? And then longer term, how does the West start to shore up the banking system?
Well, the humanitarian need that is needed is really life-saving one at the moment. Of course, our messages to the Taliban is we cannot work if not our female and male staff are equally able to work. So in 7 out of the 14 provinces where my organization is, we have resumed work with male and female staff. We're working on the remaining 7. We cannot do education if we cannot do boys and girls at the same time. We're making progress here. But now it's winterization programming, as we call it, that is needed. So we're procuring massive quantities of blankets and clothing and heating and tents and shelter for the people who have nothing. We will also have to do that for food. And we're working with the UN and other humanitarian partners here so that it is not going through the authorities, totally independent from them, directly to the people.
The West should have seen this coming, shouldn't they?
Well, yeah, what they should have seen coming is cutting development funding that kept hundreds of thousands of teachers and nurses and doctors and water engineers and public employees afloat overnight would lead to a collapse in the wider society. So what I'm surprised really is, where are the trust funds where UN agencies could pay public salaries that the World Bank is holding money for? Why wasn't that prepared really? It's the same 40 million civilians that were helped before that now were left behind. Okay. We didn't go for the door. We are here, but we're too alone really as humanitarians. Needs to be